In this simple guide, I will show you how to put together this incredibly strong Bloodhound's Fang bleed build. The Bloodhound's Fang is a curved greatsword that you can obtain relatively early in the game. It scales primarily on dexterity, with a B scaling when fully upgraded, with strength on the side with a C scaling. The Ash of War, Bloodhound's Finesse, is a combo move. It starts out with a quick upward slash, and you can follow this up with a second attack by using the heavy attack button shortly after the initial attack. The weapon already comes with bleed automatically, but we can increase its build-up with Blood Flame Blade, which barely requires any faith to use. Now let's get started on the Talismans. First up, we have the Shard of Alexander. This is an easy choice since this build's playstyle revolves around spamming Bloodhound's Finesse. This will give us a 15% buff to our skill attack power. If you don't have the Shard of Alexander, you can also use the Warrior Jar Shard, but it will only give us a 10% buff. Second is Lord of Blood's Exaltation. This talisman will give us an amazing 20% damage buff when blood loss occurs in the vicinity. Since this build is centered around blood loss, this is a no-brainer. Next up, I am using the Two-Handed Sword Talisman. This talisman will give us a massive 15% damage increase to all attacks as long as we are two-handing the weapon. Now, with all of the essential talismans out of the way, this last slot is entirely up to you. Some good recommendations would be the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman. Use this if you often find yourself running out of stamina, as it greatly increases stamina recovery speed. You could also use the Bull Goat's Talisman. This will raise our poise, keeping us from getting knocked out of Bloodhound's Finesse. If you like charged heavy attacks, another great option is the Axe Talisman, which raises damage of all charged attacks. Now moving on to the spells we'll be using, first up is Blood Flame Blade. Blood Flame Blade will allow you to apply some extra bleed damage onto your weapon, and combined with Bloodhound's Finesse, we have a chance to build up bleed much faster. Second, I'm using Flame Grant Me Strength for that 20% buff on physical damage and fire damage. Lastly, we'll also use Golden Vow for another 15% physical damage boost. It also gives us some damage negation and stacks with Flame Grant Me Strength. With all these combined, we'll see some impressive damage numbers, but the build is not yet complete. We're still missing the most crucial piece, which I will reveal soon. For now, let's move on to armor sets. Here, there's no specific set you should be using. You could go for fashion, or you could keep it simple with the Rakshasa armor set, since it buffs all damage by 2% for each piece. This adds up to an 8% increase when you equip the whole set. Keep in mind the extra damage you'll take when using this. Another set I like to use is the Armor of Solitude. It has some pretty good defensive numbers and looks crisp. It's also pretty heavy though, so make sure you're not overloaded. Now for the Wondrous Physick. First up, I'm using the Blood-Sucking Cracked Tear. It enhances all attacks at the cost of siphoning your HP away little by little. The second slot doesn't matter as much, but I chose to go with the Green Burst Crystal Tear. This will also increase our stamina recovery speed, so that we'll never have to worry about running out. Another great option is the Opaline Hard Tear. This tear will work good with any build as it boosts all damage negation for a period of time. Now let's get on with the final and most important piece, the stats. It is extremely important to have the correct stats for this build to be able to properly wield the weapon and maximize damage potential. I have Vigor at 60. This is because we need to be able to tank some hits, as the Ash of War might miss and leave us unable to dodge in certain situations. I put Mind at 25. This scaling will allow us to use the Ash of War without having to worry about FP, most times never even using a flask. You could even go lower at 20 since Bloodhound's Finesse doesn't use much FP. I have my Endurance at 30. You could even raise it to 35 or 40 so that you never run out of stamina for dodging and attacking. Strength is at 18. Here we just need to meet the minimum requirements for the weapon, so you don't need any more than that unless you're pretty high level. You need to have 80 points into Dexterity. This is the main scaling stat of the weapon. You could even go higher, but this is a pretty good cap. We don't need to upgrade Intelligence for this build, and as for Faith, I have it at 25. This will allow us to use all the buffs I talked about earlier in the video. Since this build revolves around blood loss, You'll want to have 30 to 40 points into Arcane, since Arcane will increase our blood loss build-up.